Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to ELTea Time MENA. If you can hear me, please let me know loud. We are loud and clear. So ELTea Time MENA, this is our coffee break style advancing learning podcast series, where each episode I am joined by a guest, an educator from right here in MENA, the Middle East and North Africa region. And we're going to discuss a contemporary topic of their choosing, something that's of interest to them, over a nice cup of tea. And I haven't got my camera on, so I'm going to put mine on actually, so people can see me. I think that's nice. Today, I am joined by the wonderful Dr. Nawar Mughrabi. Pronounced that correctly? Is that okay?
Yes,
Good morning, Nawar.
correct. Good morning to you, Nathan.
How are you this morning?
Fine. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Okay, before we get going, let me introduce to the people who are with us all about Nawar. Dr. Nawar is a very passionate instructor in the field of higher education. So this is where her experience mostly goes, but she has experience with other levels as well. She's got extensive experience in assisting students and helping them to succeed in achieving their career goals through the use of real-world and hands-on projects. She previously taught here in MENA at the American University of the Middle East, which is in Kuwait, AUM. She was using a project-based learning in her business English courses. And that's where she learned all about the benefits and the opportunities that can come from this project-based learning approach. And this led Nawar to go on and study further. And she recently earned her doctorate degree in education from the University of Liverpool in the UK, which I also studied at, by the way, Nawar. You probably didn't know that. I also
Really?
I did, yeah. And
No.
she published her thesis on project-based learning implementation to foster student motivation. So I think it's clear that Nawar has personally contributed to this field of project-based learning through experiencing the importance of applying this approach and its benefits for both students and teachers. And she has very kindly joined us today to share her insights, her research, and her learning journey, I guess we would like to call it. So welcome, Nawar. We are very, very, very happy to have you with us today on ELTea Time MENA.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. Before we begin, though, I need to know, because this is ELTea time, what is your tea or hot drink of choice this morning?
I'm having Americano with almond milk.
Ooh, that's in the healthy, the healthy version. It's still
It is.
early. I have gone with tea this week. I have got green tea with forest fruits, which is one of my
Wow.
wife's favorites. So I'm checking it out. I don't normally drink this, but I thought I would give it a go. So I've got a full cup of tea ready to go. We've got some people in the chat box. I can see them saying good morning from Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, which is amazing. Please, guys, do let us know what hot drink you're drinking. And if you have any questions throughout the session, please do pop them into the chat box and we will try to address them as well. Okay, so because we're short on time, because it's just a short podcast, today's topic, project-based learning and motivation. And I'm actually really happy to be hosting this podcast today, because this episode for me sort of brings together everything that we've been working on with teachers here in MENA over the past, I don't know, month or 6 weeks during our back to school season. We've been doing project work with students. We've looked at the benefits of using them, but also building on that and exploring how to use them in an online context. For those of you who joined Lucas's session, how to assess them and how to assess through them. So this shift towards more of an assessment for learning approach. And also, I guess, distinguishing the difference between students doing a project and using a fully integrated project-based learning approach. For me, there's a little bit of a difference, and I hope Nawar will kind of draw that out a little bit. So I guess this podcast, I guess, contextualizes that a little bit. It's all very well for us to talk about what teachers and students should be doing, but I think it's really nice to see that, you know, in practice here in MENA, somebody that's actually been engaging with it with students. So going beyond this kind of theory and tips and advice and contextualizing it. And I think this is, for me, what teachers want to know. They want to know about, how have teachers done this in my context or a similar context? And hopefully at the end of the podcast, people will feel a little bit more confident and inspired to try implementing this project-based learning approach with their students, um, and that there's some benefits. So, Noah, you have anything you'd like to add at this point? That's my kind of introduction, I guess, to the topic and the podcast.
Actually, I believe that this approach is one of the active approaches improve the quality of education. So it's a good idea to get out of the comfort zone and to start implementing this approach in the classroom. And you can see the benefits of this approach as I did while implementing it in my classroom as well.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. And I think we're going to cover a lot of that stuff, this idea of student-led, active learning. I think a lot of that will come up throughout the podcast, which is great.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start a little bit at the beginning, I think, before we kind of jump into what you did. I tried recently to explain, and I kind of showed a few examples of the difference between students doing a project and project-based learning as an integrated approach. I'm not sure how well I did. You were at the webinar, so you could probably comment on that. Please don't pull me down too much. But I think you're far more qualified than I am on this particular topic. So if you don't mind, would you kind of briefly explain in your own words, what is a project-based learning approach, or PBL as it's sometimes known?
Project-based learning approach is totally different than doing only a project. When you do a project, it's just a task that students have to do at the end of the semester by doing a certain presentation. But if we look at project-based learning, it's a holistic approach where students are learning in every step of the process. They improve the skills. They collaborate with the team members. They are practicing self-autonomy. They link themselves to the world around them by focusing on authentic problems, trying to find solutions. It's more into an active approach, more into a vibrant classroom, and it's not only doing a task at the end of, for example, a certain requirement done or a certain presentation. So the idea is to engage students more through this active approach.
I tell you the word that I love out of all of that is holistic, is this idea of it being a holistic approach. Everything kind of having a purpose, everything integrated, working together, not kind of individual tasks or, do this worksheet to practice this, and then maybe we'll use that for something later on. It's all encompassing, right?
Correct. Yes, it's about focusing on these learning outcomes, on these benefits, in order to get the good result of this approach.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So it's starting from the student and working out as well. So not just
And
holistic. Yes.
actually, it's both. It's the students and the teacher. They're working hand in hand in order to get the benefits.
Would you call it then like a journey? It's like a journey between the student and the teacher. Everybody kind of moving forward together. I like that. It's nice.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
They're collaborating together, working together
Mm.
for the benefits of both of them, actually.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, really, I'm glad you. It's nice, I think, to get this clarity first, so that people can differentiate between. I think a lot of people use, like you say, task-based projects a lot, but this idea of project-based learning uh, may not be so common, I guess, in MENA. I don't know. I haven't been everywhere.
Actually, Nathan, there is limited research on
Mm.
project-based learning implementation in the MENA region. The most of the studies are focused on the benefits of this approach, but the way it's implemented and used, it's still limited.
That's really interesting as well. So yeah, maybe something that can come out of all of this work is hopefully people will engage more with, and it doesn't have to be doing a piece of research for a journal, but yeah,
Yeah.
writing blogs, getting your voice out there on things that you've done is perhaps one of the tips we'll save to the end. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
I want to use the time that we have to really kind of delve into your experiences, really. So, can you tell us how did you find out about and I guess become interested in this particular approach? Because there's lots of approaches that you could have used. You could have been at AUM and gone with TTT or PPP and stuck with that. What was it about this that kind of attracted you, and how did you get started?
Actually, I reflected on my personal experience. I have applied the approach in the classroom, and I found students are highly engaged, especially when I raise a certain topic, asking them to work in teams. I felt that students were active in the classroom. I was working as a facilitator, giving them more voice, giving them more autonomy. So I got good results. I felt that they are more self regulated and more confident in the classroom as well. And the second thing that actually I wanted to contribute here to the UAE, especially that, as you know, the UAE vision is always about empowering the Emirati nation. Towards innovation, towards creativity. So, as well, the UAE is focusing on the knowledge economy through the development of education and the quality of education. So, this was a very good opportunity for me to dig deeper into the topic of project-based learning, especially here in the UAE, because I believe that the conventional approach, the student or the teacher-led approach, is no longer valid if the nations are focusing on innovations and creativity. They need to empower their students for the future challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were trying this approach in Kuwait as well, right? Outside of the UAE, and Kuwait's
Yes.
slightly different. I've been to Kuwait many times,
Yeah.
and interacted with the educational system there. I've been to AUM actually.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
I have, yeah, a long time ago now, but I've been there.
Yeah.
Did you find any when you started down this path? Because I think this is one of the things that teachers are interested in. When you start something
Mhm.
new, did you find there were any difficulties, any challenges from the students, but also from faculty or management? Were people enthusiastic? Were they supportive?
Actually, the management was very supportive. We had workshops on the implementation of the approach, focusing on the students, of course, from the beginning. Limitations were related to the way balancing the power between us as teachers and students. Um, the autonomy given to students and the power given to students compared to the power given to the teachers, because we're used to have the power. We're supposed to lead the classroom, but with this approach, you need to start giving some power, some autonomy to students. So this was one of the limitations or one of the challenges in the beginning. Other challenges, of course, can be related to the context, whether here in Kuwait or in the UAE. It could be related to the culture itself. It's related to the types of topics chosen for project based learning. We have to be very culturally accurate, taking some norms, some traditions into consideration when choosing the topics of our projects, of course.
Yeah, and of course, there's such a huge. We talk about MENA. I say the word MENA a lot, but even
Yeah.
between the UAE and Kuwait, vastly different cultural approaches to education. The UAE is very international. I mean, certainly here in Dubai, very international, very outward looking, and Kuwait, it's a lot of Kuwait content is Kuwait. I don't know how the word is Kuwaitization. I guess that's not.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Um,
Yes.
so that impacts. But yeah, so and from the first part, this kind of limitation and challenge with faculty, it's great that they were really supportive. I think that's amazing. But I'm really interested in the challenge with students because I think for a lot of teachers, when they think about project-based learning, they immediately think, my students have never done this and they're not expecting it, and their expectations play a large role in how they interact with me as a teacher. you know how do I convince them that this is beneficial for them when really they come and they're like, I just want the answers. We know that there's exams. you're the teacher supposed to be telling us. Like you said, this old traditional teacher-led approach. How did students react when you first started doing it with them? And how did you kind of convince them? Was there any kind of methods?
Yes, actually, the successful implementation of project-based learning is always related to the implementation or the practices of the teachers. And it's always about the belief system in the approach itself. I believe if the teachers are believing in the approach, if they are motivated, they will be able to motivate their students as well, and push them and get them engaged in the approach. I believe that it's all about the teachers believing in the system. The belief system is really a crucial point in order to implement the approach. So, if the students or the teachers have their belief with this approach, having the capabilities and having the know how of the steps of applying this approach, they will be able to convince their students and push them out of the comfort zone so they can start uh, with simple tasks. Um, and I'm sure that they will end up with, as we said, a holistic implementation of project-based learning.
Yeah, so what I'm kind of summarizing, I guess. So have confidence in the approach, have confidence in your ability to pull that approach off step by
Yes,
step. So don't just start with like a massive project, which everybody kind of
exactly.
struggles with. Start with something small, small steps.
Yes,
And
exactly.
then and then I think the other part that I got from that was engagement. So not just using the project or project-based learning to engage students, but having this wider engagement. So engaging them in the process itself, I guess. So
Absolutely.
asking them, what they're interested in, how they think this can go, what challenges they might see in doing the project. So I guess this improvement of communication between students, and teacher and faculty.
Yes, totally agree, Nathan. The feedback and the reflection is one of the most important points as well
Mm,
in the approach. Students are
yeah,
supposed to share their feedback. Open communication with the teacher is very important as well, in order to engage the students and motivate them towards the approach.
yeah, and it just reminded me of something I think I said in the webinar that I did last week, which was just like do reflect and repeat, right? Just this constant reflection. It's not just do a task and finish and move on. It then reflect on it, do it again, build on it, bring it together with other students, build on that.
Exactly.
Just, yeah, it keeps growing and building, and just and go with the flow, I guess. See where it takes them. It's um it's a divergent, I guess, approach. It could go anywhere. It's not about coming to an answer, right?
Exactly. True.
Yeah, amazing. So interesting, and we could probably talk about this all day, I would say. But I want to also move on to your research and the doctorate that you've just done. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, So, I'd like to hear more about your thesis. So I want to know, how was that as an experience to go through, doing your doctorate, writing this piece of research, doing the research itself here in the UAE? How I've got lots of questions, things like how did you pin down your final topic? What kind of process did you go through? All of these kinds of things. I guess what I'm really interested in is that you've taken this topic of project-based learning and you've kind of gone deeper into it. You've kind of investigated this motivational aspect as well. So I guess, yeah, I want to know how that went, and what kinds of things did you discover, I guess, through doing this thesis and this research.
Yeah, actually, the experience was amazing, although it has its ups and downs. It was not that easy, but it was a very good opportunity to listen and interview educators, teachers in higher education, sharing their experience on the implementation of the approach, how they're using the approach of project based learning in their classroom. Um, it was really interesting to discover many important points related to the teachers' practices, the way they deal with this approach. The most important point was that this approach won't be successful without the successful implementation and practices of the teachers. If it's not applied in a proper way, then the outcome won't be up to the expectations. I believe that as well, what I have discovered that teachers should have a belief, a strong belief actually in the approach, that it's not only doing a project, it's, as I mentioned, a holistic one that improves students' skills um, towards innovation, towards creativity. And also, I discovered that communication is a very important aspect towards implementing this approach. I as well discovered that the collaboration among the teachers is very important, because when students see their teachers collaborating together, working on certain projects, this also will affect them positively. If there are collaborating teachers, there are also collaborating students working together as well. I discovered as well that self-regulation, student self-autonomy is very important, because this is the heart of motivation. And when students are having this self-regulation, they will be able to take the topic and start finding solutions, work with their peers. So self-autonomy is a very important aspect as well in project-based learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to agree with everything you said because you've just done a huge piece of research on it. But yeah, so there's so many like interesting points. I love that all of this stuff around teachers collaborating together and not just doing that to benefit what they're doing with the students, but modeling what they're doing to students. You know, showing them that this is not just something we expect you to do. I think we do that with students a lot. We say, you know, this is what you need to do. You go away and do this work. You go away and do these tasks. You know, sometimes we don't always practice what we preach. So I love project-based learning for that. Teachers have to really model what they want their students, all of these great skills, showing that they can work with other people, other teachers, showing that they can show leadership qualities, because leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about being able to step back a little bit sometimes as well and give other people the opportunity to come up with ideas, to shine, and all of this kind of stuff. So I love that part of your research. This stuff around
Thank
teachers.
you.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Thank you, Nathan.
Okay, so because I'm quite aware of the time, and people can actually read part of this research. I read it over the weekend. Actually, it's super interesting. It's online. Maybe we can put the link in the chat box in a bit. People can go on and read the first part of that research, which is available. Because I'm sure people would definitely find some of the ideas and some of the links as well, some of the background reading. I'm sure lots of teachers would find that interesting. But again, I want to kind of contextualize what we're doing. I want to kind of bring our conversation back down to the level of teachers, I guess, and the level of teaching and learning here in MENA. So I've got a question, but there are kind of two aspects to this question, I think. So the first is, you know, what kinds of skills or abilities, or I guess considerations, might teachers need or need to think about if they wish to move towards, you know, a more integrated, holistic, project-based learning approach? That's kind of one aspect of the question. And I guess the flip side of that question is we kind of touched on this already, kind of what limitations or restrictions can you foresee in implementing this kind of approach here in MENA? So I guess what I really want to know is, you know, how do teachers get started with this? Where do they start? Or what should they do if they're not sure where to get started? You've talked a bit about cultural backgrounds. You've talked about educational systems working. There's a whole lot of stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
What kind of tips, I guess, what kinds of things have you got to say about getting started with project-based learning?
Actually, one of the most important points that they need to assess student skills level before they start the project. This is very important because they are building on the students' previous experience. So before we start the project, we're supposed to know what's the skill level that we have here in the class, and then we build the project or we choose the topic based on this. A very important thing that teachers need to focus on is coach and support their students. Yes, we said self-autonomy and self-regulation, but we still need to supervise the students. We still need to offer them support. They can come back to us. That's why I was mentioning that it's good to have an open communication with the students to check on their progress, on the project implementation, and to keep providing them with feedback. As well, a very important point is the teacher character plays a very important role in the way students are applying the project, the way they're motivated in the classroom. The teacher experience as well, the ability to know and understand as well the approach will help in the implementation of the project-based learning.
Yeah.
Another point as well that teachers need to understand the significance of the teacher and student autonomy. They need to understand that the student will have control over the choice of the topics. So this is a very important aspect. Yes, there is an authority for the teacher, but there is also autonomy for the students. So the teachers need to do this balance between their authority and the control that the student should start having in order to make this approach successful in its implementation.
Yeah, and another thing, you use so many great words. Balance is a really good word. Having that balance between uh,
Exactly.
what the teacher wants to achieve and I guess what the students can achieve, and pitching that at a high enough level so you're kind of, like you say, coaching them, pushing them to not just know what it is we want them to know or practice the skills that we want them to practice. In language teaching, it can become very kind of knowledge and skills focused in the classroom. But this is kind of going way beyond that. This is no, students can go really high if we can set them up and coach them to get there. So that's really nice. I tell you what I also really liked is your tip around starting from what they already know. Um,
Correct. Building
is
on their experience.
Yeah, and again, it's not. And again, I think that course books can have this effect. I don't want to say it's a wholly negative effect, but it can have this kind of like, I guess it's that old kind of blank slate approach. Every unit is like a blank slate. On Sunday morning, we come into class. We're going to be doing Unit 9, and I'm going to start. Yeah, and again, it's this PPP. Yeah, we start from nothing. I'm going to present, then you're going to practice, then you're going to produce. This is totally kind of flipping that around, changing that whole mindset, saying, actually, no, they're not starting with nothing. They start with a lot. They've got ideas, they've got prior knowledge, they've got some skills that they've been practicing already. Let's start there and let's build on that continuously. And then, like you say, coach them through. So yeah, amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love all
Thank
of
you.
this. Yeah, it's so good. Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left. So I guess we're coming to the end of our discussion, but I do want to summarize with some tips because I think that's really nice for the guys who are attending with us today. And we do have a question in the chat box, so we'll address that one as well. I guess if I was to think about any tips when it comes to implementing project-based learning, tip one, and I think you already mentioned this, is it requires a team effort. I don't think teachers can just decide to go in on a Sunday morning and say, you know what, I'm going to move all of my teaching to PBL now. I think teachers need to plan for it. I think they need to show, they need to make it very visual for management, for parents, for students, so that everybody's working together towards this kind of common goal. And everybody sees the purpose and benefits of project-based learning as a long-term project in itself. I guess PBL is a project in itself. It's a project-based learning project. Yeah. And I guess maybe that answers Natia's question a little bit here. So what about primary students? So again, we haven't mentioned anything to do with parents in this podcast because we've been talking about research in a higher education context. But I think in order to pull off a project-based learning in primary, you've got to get buy-in from management. You need a whole team approach. You need to show parents the value of it. and have them buying in and contributing and working with their child, and having, like you said before, collaboration between peers, teachers, parents. Everybody needs to be working together. So that would be my, I guess, my overarching tip. Um, and tip 2 also relates to that question, because I think that project-based learning should start as young as possible. We've been talking again about higher education, this kind of context. But actually, I think a lot of the things that you need to be able to do project-based learning in HE, you actually need a lot of those skills, and to have been practicing those skills step by step throughout the whole learning journey. So starting in pre-primary and primary. And I touched on that in the webinar that I did, this idea of the learning journey and how we do something in pre-primary, and that gives them skills to be able to do higher level activities, project activities in primary, and again onto teens and this kind of thing. So everybody's kind of, again, working together. It's not just a teacher teaching English. The whole educational system is coordinated, I guess, is where I'm going. They would be my kind of tips. Nawar, I've just talked for a long time then. Any tips from you want to finish with? You've got a lot, I'm sure.
Actually, project-based learning ensures the quality of education. However, the teachers, they need to understand the conditions of this approach so it can be adapted correctly in the context. So they need to take into consideration the context itself, as I said, the topic, the abilities of their students, in order to implement it successfully. So it's all related to the teachers' practices and how do they adopt this approach in their local context.
Yeah. So get to know your students, it sounds like. What a
Yeah,
great man. And that's a great tip beyond project-based learning, I'm sure. Get to know your students, find out about them, what makes them
true.
different to each other. Amazing. Well, I think we've come to an end. My tea is kind of coming to the bottom of its cup. Of course, there's loads of places that people can get professional development support when it comes to project-based learning. We've done loads here during back to school, Macmillan Education, but we'll be doing more throughout the academic year, so stay in touch with us. If you missed any of the project-based learning webinars that have already happened, go to the MENA PD Academy website and you can see all of the recordings there. Some people have joined the module. If you didn't get to join the module, which is now closed, don't worry, because we'll turn it into a self-study module probably around November, December time, so you can engage with that as well. If anybody has their own tips, put them in the chat box. We'd love to hear them. Put them on the Facebook group, share your experiences with each other in terms of doing projects, doing project-based learning, doing research around project-based learning, and also get involved in the Insights Index program and give us your feedback on that. There's loads of stuff around project-based learning on One Stop English, so go there. Nawar, anywhere you would send people? I would send them to your piece of research. Again, we need to find, while you're talking, I'll get the link for that actually.
Okay, thank you, Nathan.
Any other places that you would send teachers for learning more about project-based learning?
Well, actually, I would recommend an online resource or a website for the teachers. It's called edutopia.org.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a good and interesting website. It shows how project-based learning is implemented in different contexts. So this will be very useful to go through and to know how it's implemented in different contexts around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually used that Edutopia stuff for some of the background when I did the webinar last week, actually. So there's
Yeah,
loads of, and there's really nice videos on there.
yeah,
And
it's really useful.
yeah, lots of great stuff. So a really great recommendation. Go to Edutopia and look up project-based learning there. Okay, so we will, I've got to get the links up for the websites. I will do it at the end. Give me 2 seconds and I'll put some links on. Okay, so my cup of tea has come to an end, and so therefore I guess today's podcast episode is also unfortunately coming to an end, sadly. I'd love to learn more about project-based learning. Nawar, Dr. Nawar, thank you so much for joining us for this cup of tea or cup of coffee for you. It was a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure too.
Yeah, it was a fantastic discussion. Thank you
Thanks.
very much to the guys who have joined us today, and for your comments in the chat box. And for those guys who perhaps joined us on Facebook as well, I will go over there and see if anybody put any comments, and I will answer them as well. I hope you enjoyed your cup of coffee or cup of tea while you've been with us for this half an hour. Please do go check out our other ELTea Time episodes on the website. There are 3 before this one, and there will be one again, hopefully next week. But for now, from me, Nathan, and from Dr. Nawar, we wish you all a very great day. Take care, everybody. Goodbye, Nawar.
Goodbye. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.
You too. Bye.